Welcome to HPP Care's Calhfa ADU grant invoice processing session. This is Catherine, Executive Director and founder of HPP Cares. I am going to go over the process for getting your invoices paid expeditiously. We have come a long way, and we've worked out a lot of the little kinks that have been in place. I think you will find this video informative, and you will find much success in getting your invoices processed. When we first started this, it was taking days, if not probably a week or so, for you to get your invoice processed. We now, as soon as invoices come in, are processing them pretty much in real time. We have a team that comes in at 6 in the morning Pacific Standard Time and works until 3. And then we have a team that works midday until about 8 o'clock at night. So as soon as the invoice is received, we are processing it and getting it to our invoicing department, both Diana and Genesis, who are working those invoices expeditiously and getting them processed and paid out immediately. I think we've gotten so many testimonials, and you might want to take a look at those testimonials that can be found on our homepage with many of the wonderful gestures from participants who've completed their projects and have gotten their ADU grant funds to where they need to go. Their vendors have been paid, and it's just been a real positive light. So definitely take a look at some of those experiences many of our participants have had, in particularly with the invoice process, and how we've gone leaps and bounds of making improvements and changes to today, knocking invoices out as they come in. With that said, I want to first and foremost start this session letting you know that I'm going to be discussing two different ways in which invoices are processed. So I always lead with every education that I do when it comes to the ADU grant by asking the participant, and in this instance, the person listening, how are you funding your project? That's first and foremost. Are you funding it with cash that's not connected to any sort of mortgage or HELOC or refinance because the property is paid off in full? Or are you funding the project with cash that was taken out from a refinance or a second mortgage or a HELOC? The process and rules for engagement are totally different based off of how you answer that question. So you first and foremost need to know when watching this video, am I paying cash, not connected to any mortgages associated with this property where the project is being built? Or am I paying with cash associated with the property that is connected to a refinance, existing mortgage, second or HELOC or home improvement? Once we get that out in the air, then you will listen to how I am going to speak pertaining to each scenario. So we're going to go ahead and tackle those who are paying with cash and the project is not connected to any type of loan, home improvement, refinance, HELOC, second, the list goes on and on. So you have a free and clear property and you just happen to be an amazing saver or hard worker and you had cash to pay for your ADU. You know that you have to fully fund the project, meaning that if the scope of work for the project is $100,000, from your contractor, your licensed contractor, and they say to do this ADU, it's $100,000. You know that you have the ADU grant from HPP Cares. Obviously, it's $40,000 minus the administration fee and the escrow fee. And in some instances, depending on if there's any fraud that's been committed or contractors have walked off from jobs, we do have the $2,500 that is inhaled if we need to use that to help you get your project back on track. But neither here nor there, you've got the $40,000 grant minus those admin fees and the La Mesa fund control fee. If we're looking at a project that is $100,000, we know that we need it to fully fund the project by, let's just keep the numbers simple, $60,000, okay? So now we have a fully funded project, someone who is paying cash for their project and wishes to use the grant. Please know that if you are a cash paying client, who is funding their project strictly from cash, and again, it is not connected to any mortgages, seconds, HELOCs, and things of that nature, before you even start to submit your invoices, you must in turn fully fund the project. So for math, quick sense, $100,000 is the project cost. You got the $40,000 grant. That means you need to fund your managed escrow account $60,000. You say to yourself, well, $60,000 is going to sit in a managed escrow account so HPP Cares can do what they want to do. Not the case. That money will sit there until you present the necessary invoices and the appropriate documentation, and we will pay whoever you wish for us to pay expeditiously. We just ask for certain documentation to make that happen. Also, when you do submit invoices via this link that I'm going to show you today and add the appropriate documentation, not only do you need to sign the request to release the funds and approve it, I also have to approve it. Now, there has not been too many instances where I have denied an approval on anyone's project, okay? It's been very far and few, okay? So we lean on the fact that you've chosen a licensed professional, you're pleased with whatever their bid is, and once you say pay this person, we pay them based off of your assessment and decision making pertaining to this particular client, or excuse me, this particular vendor. So with all that said, without further ado, I'm going to jump in for those that are cash payers. There's no loan associated with their project, and they're basically looking to pay their invoices as they move along in their process of building their ADU. So you have got your scope of work, 100,000. You know that ADU grant is 40,000. You know that you need to wire over to La Mesa Fund Control $60,000. You realize that you now need to pay for your permits. You need to pay for your city fees. You need to pay an architect. The list goes on and on. You will get those invoices from the professionals that you have decided to work with on your ADU project. If you are working with the city, you will also get their invoice for the city. Now, when you are submitting an invoice to be paid for the city, you do not need a W-9. You do not need a release of lien. They are a city, a municipality, and they do not need to provide those items. But anyone else who we are paying invoices for, who is licensed to do the work pertaining to your ADU, must provide a W-9, must provide a release of lien for the invoice amount, and must provide us an outgoing payment form for where they would like for their check to be sent. Okay? I will repeat that. Any person or entity that is licensed who is working on your ADU project and they present you an invoice and wish to be paid, they must provide a W-9, a release of lien for the invoice amount, as well as an outgoing payment form for where in which they wish to have the payment sent, their check sent to. Okay. Again, this is just for participants who are paying cash, not associated with a mortgage for their ADU project. Now, you will, as soon as you have those items that I've listed for each invoice that you are wishing to have paid. So you say, well, Catherine, I've got an architect that I need to get paid. I need to pay a site prep company. Wonderful. Give us the invoice, the W-9, the release of lien for the amount of that particular invoice, and an outgoing payment form, and watch us work magic and have that check issued ASAP. Okay? Please, 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 please understand we are doing this video because we want to make sure you have everything you need in order to get these vendors paid ASAP. Okay? We're not trying to make this difficult. We have to follow a checks and balances with regards to this funding. And we must ensure that we are doing every file exactly the same so that if and when we have audits, everything makes sense to the auditors who are reviewing the files. You can't give me an invoice that has someone else's project name on it your name is misspelled, it doesn't have the license for the vendor who is looking to be paid, who claims their license. Everything has to be spelled out and clear so that when we are audited, there are no questions. That's the game plan here. So without further ado, if you are a cash payer, you've already managed to put all the funding for your project in the managed escrow account. You are ready to start presenting invoices to us, and you can do it every day. You can wait until the end of the week. You can do it hourly. If you've got an invoice that needs to be paid for one of the vendors on your project, submit it via this portal and let's get these people paid, because we are not in a place that we want to delay your project or cause any frustration between you and your vendor. We want to make sure that the project is moving along and there's no issues with getting that funding out ASAP. And I will toot our horn. For months, we have been getting payments out expeditiously as long as consumers provide us the necessary documentation that we need in order to meet the requirements of the federal funds that we are disseminating for ADU projects across the state. Now, how to fill out this form. You're going to put in your first name and your last name. You are going to use the email address for which you submitted your ADU grant application. Many of you we are funding not only have varying names, where we thought your name was one name, but we're finding out you have different names, which is not a problem. Use the name that is on your award letter. Let's keep it consistent. Also, use the email address when you submitted your ADU grant application way back in August of 2022 or in October of 2022. Use that email address so that it's easy for our algorithms to connect those invoices to our client management system. That is why we put this in place. Okay. It's kind of a checks and balance system for our client management tool to also have track of the invoices that are being paid out, and we can get to things and do the necessary internal audits that we need to do in order to keep this program being successful as it has been thus far. Now, every time you submit an invoice request, we are requesting that you provide the scope of work, the contract, the budget that your licensed contractor gave you when you were initially courting them and were deciding who to go with for your project. So every time you are submitting your invoice request, it must have the budget, the scope of work, or however the contract is laid out to say for 123 Main Street, the ADU is going to be $100,000. Okay. In addition to the invoices. So if you're paying 10 different trades, 10 different licensed professionals, we will need 10 different invoices for each of those licensed professionals. And I'm going to show you an example of an invoice and how that invoice needs to look in order to successfully move through our process, because we don't accept willy-nilly invoices either. Everything has to spell out and check out correctly so that we have no issues as to who was getting paid, why they were getting paid, and why is this payment over here. We've never had that problem following this process, and we're not going to start. So we're going through this to ensure that you, the participant, have a clear understanding as to how to get these invoices moved through expeditiously. So again, if we've got 10 vendors, we need 10 different invoices. Please make sure that the invoices include your project address, not someone else's project address. The spelling of your name is correct. Their license number is on there. Their business name is on there, or if it's just their name, put their name on there, and the address for which their invoice payment needs to be sent, as well as whatever they're invoicing for. They can be as extensive, detailed as they wish, or they can be very limited in their languaging. Bottom line is the invoice should have a date, the name of the person who's provided the invoice, their license number, their address, and then it should have your name, your address for the project, and then whatever the invoice is, the amount, and where the check needs to be mailed. We are no longer wiring payments to vendors associated with your projects. There has been a resounding amount of fraud, not from this particular program. I must emphasize, not from this program. But in the industry, many escrow companies have stopped the process of doing wires to contractors and things of that such. And so it's just another protective measure that our process has taken in order to make sure that we've gotten the success that we have. Now you say, well, my vendor needs to get paid right away. Not a problem. There is an option on our outgoing payment form where you can check the box to have a check FedExed to the whatever vendor is needing that funding ASAP. So we do have an answer for no longer doing wires. Now, let's proceed. So we've got the budget or the scope of work for your project on every submission that you make. We also will need the invoices or invoice to be uploaded, which is in the fourth box down, okay? For every invoice that is submitted by your licensed professional, we will also need them to provide a W-9. The W-9 serves as a document that if we are audited, it also goes with the business, okay, that we are paying. So if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, I build ADUs, the W-9 should reflect 1, 2, 3, 4, I build ADUs, and it will have their specific EIN number, which is the business's identification number on that particular document, all of which need to be signed and dated, okay? In addition to the W-9 form, we need to have a release of lien for the amount of the invoice. It could be a progressive release of lien because maybe that contractor or person who's working with you is not completed the project as of yet. We will accept a progressive release of lien, but it must be the release of lien on the documentation is provided on the screen that I'm going to be showing you here shortly. I just want to take us through the form, and then I'm going to reference where to find the documents and the templates of the documents so that you have success in completing those, and or you can show your licensed professional, this is what they need filled out. And there's also templates associated with how to fill out the documents. So again, there's no delays in getting those payments. And we've had lots of success by following this process. It works pretty seamless, if you ask me. So we have discussed where to put the invoices, whether it's 1 or whether it's 25 or 1,000 invoices. All invoices need to be uploaded here. The same thing with the W-9. If it's 1,000 invoices for expenses that need to be paid, then there needs to be 1,000 W-9s uploaded for each of those invoices associated with the licensed professional who has in turn given you that invoice and wishes to be paid. In addition to that, if it is 1,000 invoices, not only do we need the W-9s, 1,000 of those, we also need 1,000 release of liens specific to, is the project complete or is the project in process, and what is the amount of the invoice so everything matches up. As soon as all of those items are put in, we also ask for where do the licensed professionals wish to have their payments sent to them. And that is this section here, how payments should be paid out. There is an outgoing payment form that each vendor who provides you an invoice needs to not only provide the W-9 and the release of lien, if it's in progress, for the amount of the release of lien, they also in turn will need to tell us where the payment needs to go. As you can see, this is very regimented and very uniform. There is a reason for this. If and when we have an audit, we in turn are able to say, hey, here is the payment. And everything spells out accordingly. So that when you do ultimately sign your request, it's a complete package with everything pertaining to your project, the total cost. It also culminates the invoices. It also provides the W-9s. It also provides where the checks are mailed to for these particular vendors. And it also gives you a release of lien. So no one can ever come back and say, I was never paid. You've got an email trail of everything pertaining to your ADU project, every vendor that was paid. And guess what? You've got a release of lien. It serves as a protective measure. All of this not only is sent to you to be signed, I also have to sign it. It then in turn goes to our escrow company, and then they send you a confirmed issue of payment and a new budget for how much money is left in your managed escrow account. It's seamless. And we, again, have had a lot of success with this. It's basically what we're doing is we're not waiting until the end to try to go look for all these documents. Every time money moves in this project, we are ensuring integrity, ethics, and we are ensuring that there is no room for error, confusion, uncertainty, who's getting paid. Everything is thoroughly spelled out to the T when it comes to ensuring that your money is protected and it's paying the right person when it's supposed to be paying, and only paying when you say, I'm ready to issue a request for payment. So once you have all of those necessary documents uploaded in a PDF format, not pictures, PDF format, you then in turn would hit submit. It will say, thank you for your submission. And then in turn, our initial pre-setup team takes a look at those documentation. They may reach out to you and say, hey, we've got an error here or there. You will update them, and then in turn, it moves to our invoicing department for payment, where Diana and Genesis in turn will process those payments expeditiously. It's seamless. Now let's get into what are some of these forms that I was referring to. So in order to get to our forms, you're going to come to hppcares.org. You're going to go under the menu section and find ADU. Once you get to ADU, you're going to click on that button, and then you're going to select ADU grant access. From there, you are going to select invoice forms examples. From here are all the forms that I was referring to in the previous segment right now. That is what is required in order for your invoice to be paid. So if we look at the invoice form, scope of work or budget, obviously you are going to have that, and that's going to be provided to you by the licensed professional. So you'll upload that document. The next document would be, obviously, let's drop to the bottom and let's just go for invoices. So here is a sample of what the invoice document should look like. It must be a licensed professional, and their license must be on the invoice. It must have a date. It must have their company name and their company address, phone number, and email information. For you, the person that's got the bill, the owner's name, as well as the address for where your ADU project is there. Please make sure that this is the address for your ADU project. Not that they've made a mistake, but we've seen it in the past where contractors are busy and he was doing all his invoicing and forgot to update the address. So it must reflect the address for which this award is issued against. We cannot have it where, oh yeah, that's my other property, and this is an invoice for my other property. It doesn't work like that. Everything has to be very uniform and complete checks and balances to ensure that we stay in good standings and there's no questions with regards to our processes and how we're paying things. What also needs to appear on your invoice would be what we're paying. Are we paying for site prep? Are we paying for designs? Are we paying for permits? Now you say, well, those are all the grant expenses. If you are managing my money, because I'm paying cash and I don't have a mortgage, I'm also going to be submitting you invoices for hard costs like framing or concrete or costs that aren't under the grant. That's not a problem. Put everything together on one invoice if necessary, if it is one contractor that needs to be paid. We can also have card costs built in there, but understand, we are only going to take the grant funds from the grant buckets and pull that money. And then you have the personal funds from the hard cost buckets. We're going to pull that money. But it does make it easier if all the pre-development costs are spelled out on one invoice. and then all the hard costs are spelled out on another invoice. It really makes it a lot easier. But if you can't get it that way, we're more than welcome to accommodate however it works. Okay. But this is just an example of what type of invoice we're looking for. We definitely don't want to see an invoice on a blue line piece of paper. We don't want to see an invoice on a sticky note or a napkin. And trust me, we've had participants try to do that. We've had even licensed professionals who really weren't licensed play games because they thought that they could get around us scrutinizing, and we found out that they weren't licensed and could not get paid for the project. And they actually had were in process of defrauding the participant. So I will tell you, it makes for good books. I think after all of this, I am going to probably have the best selling book in the country of all the things that we have seen. But neither here nor there. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I think this experience has been priceless. It has been a learning experience, and it has been priceless. And I wouldn't change it for the world. Now, back to our other documentation. So I showed you the invoice. You can put as many invoices as you possibly can. I think a max of 5 in this section and a max of 5 in the other section. So now let's go into the W-9. So those vendors who give you an invoice, they must also provide a W-9. This is an example of a W-9, the template. You can use this template. It also includes all the instructions. This is an IRS document. And so if you have questions, you can look and read accordingly, okay? Now, we also helped you by completing an actual W-9. So here's the W-9, and it also tells you how to fill out information accordingly. And so we're giving you everything at your fingertips so that you can move briskly through this process and get these invoices paid. Once we get invoices paid, that means projects are moving along, and that means we get certificates of occupancy, and that's one more ADU for the state of California under this wonderful ADU grant opportunity. So I say all this to say, please make sure we got the invoice to go with the W-9 for whatever vendor is looking to be paid. The next document that we need to have signed and completed by your vendor is the conditional waiver or release. Now, if it is a progress payment, you would select the first form. But if it is a release of final payment, then you would select the second form. But as soon as you do so, you will fill this out accordingly. And we do have a fabulous template for that particular form that in turn you can reference that tells you how to fill out the document. So see, everything is at your fingertips. There's no reason to panic, no reason to get frustrated. Everything is here. And you can also refer your contractors to these templates and these forms so that they can get it done ASAP. Now you say, well, Catherine, if they gave me an invoice today, let's say my contractor and he happens to be doing all the pre-development expenses, and today is March 31st, and then 6 months from now, he gives me another set of invoices and pre-development and this, that, and the other. Does a W-9 have to also be submitted with the new date? And I'm going to tell you no. As long as the information is same and the vendor is okay with it, we will take the invoice, we will take the old W-9, and we will take the old outgoing payment form. The only thing we need new when we get that new invoice is the invoice and the progress payment form with the updated invoiced amount there. So see how simple it is? That's why when you get the gist of this, you're moving through the process and you're not even losing sleep or anything. As fast as you can get the stuff in the system is the fastest we can get payments issued. That's how quick we're moving with the process. I will tell you, we're probably getting about 15 to 20 requests a day, and that's daily. Our biggest pull is Monday morning when we have probably about 20 to 30 invoices, and it's just because people had time over the weekend to catch up with paperwork and to get us what we want. And Monday tends to be a heavy day, but people get it. And if you follow this video, you've got it, and we get those checks issued ASAP. So I'm really excited about the hard work we've put into this and seeing the fruits of our labor in this latter part of May, going into the summer months, knowing that we are not delaying anyone's projects, knowing that we are not paying vendors as quickly as we possibly can through this process. The next form that will need to be completed by the vendor who submits you the invoice is the outgoing payment form. This is the form where your owner information will go here, who we're paying. So this would be 123 Bob Builder, the address where they want the payment, and then in turn, that would be it. Okay, a signature. Now, the only reason you would sign is if you in turn need to have that check FedEx to the person who's wishing to get paid. And we're seeing a few of those requests because people know that if they follow this process, we're going to get the check in the mail as soon as possible. And then in turn, they probably have it within 5 to 7 days at the max. But if you are a little nervous and you want to ensure that you know exactly where that check is and that the vendor received it, who's supposed to be paid, you're more than welcome to select the feature regarding FedEx. And in turn, the check would be FedEx, and then you would be provided the appropriate tracking number. So it's all up to you and what you choose. Now you say to yourself, well, I do see wiring information. How come my contractor can't be wired? The funds can't be wired to them. And like I alluded to earlier, we're no longer doing wires to vendors. We do wires to participants, financial institutions, if the institution where they have their mortgage, HELOC, or second mortgage, or refinance, or whatever type they loan, or a home improvement loan is accepting wires in, we will wire in the lump sum. And I haven't even begun to start to discuss that part of the session. I'm still for people who have paid cash, not got a mortgage on the property where the project is being built, and or have nothing pertaining to a mortgage. They just were a good saver or happened to just have the asset of cash and was able to pay cash for their ADU project. This is what this portion of the session is strictly for those participants because I didn't want to mix it up so that you would be like all over the place and not really following. I will get into the other part or the other option of handling your invoices here shortly. But long story short, here are the forms, here are the templates that need to have upload when you submit your invoices. And you say, well, do I have to do this every time? Yes, you have to do this every time. We want to ensure that our files are tight. You have the proper confirmation with those very forms validating why the payment was paid, who was paid, when they were paid, and the release of liens that protects you as a homeowner so no one can come back and say, I didn't get paid. I'm going to put a release of lien. I'm going to put a lien on your property because I didn't get paid. You're going to say, yes, you did get paid. Here's the proof. In addition, every time you get the confirmation from La Mesa Fund Control, you will also see the budget or your new budget realized with what is left in each one of your accounts, whether that's your construction account or if that is your grant funds account. Everything is very transparent and very clear as to what we're doing and how it is being done, and it's done in a safe manner. I also want to stress the fact that our relationship with First Republic Bank had been severed way at the beginning when Silicon Valley's bank was taken back by the federal regulators. Okay. So we work with Axos Bank. So none of your cash monies nor the grant funds are sitting at First Republic Bank anymore. We are working with an institution by the name of Axos. So just FYI. If you also want to have the ability to log in and take a look at your accounts in real time, any day, time of the week, doesn't matter. We are more than welcome to set you up with that process. You simply just need to notify your account manager, which I'm sure many of you have a wonderful relationship with. We can see the testimonials from all of you of how you're so excited to work with these wonderful account managers, and they are so amazing. I trust you. We have such an amazing team right now. The customer service is just superb in my book. And many of you have spoken to that. So if you haven't taken a look at our testimonials, be sure to take a look. And if you haven't done a testimonial, tell people how well we have improved. Because I'll be honest with you, when we first started this, I thought, I don't know what we're going to do. But we managed to get through it, and we did immediate changes and tweaks, and ultimately, we're sitting in a fabulous position where it's just days of ease as we move smoothly through the process of getting people their grant funds out, getting their projects paid, and getting those certificate of occupancies back, so that we can tell the state, "Hey, we got another one. We got another one." So that is pretty much how those that are paying cash do not have that cash associated with any sort of mortgage. There's no mortgage on the property. This is how you process your invoices.